184. Oh. How does it shoot over? Oh, this holds. I forgot. Is that gonna help? Anyway. That's just pretty funny. Autofocus now. Through. Oh, that thing's dimensions all fucking wrong. This white lighting is all fucking. The camera is all good. Okay, so we better fix that. Why do they show me resolutions that thing can't do? Ah. Okay. Oh, and the camera crash. Ah. Deactive. Active. Okay. I guess that's my mug. Oh, controller died. I knew that was going to happen. Let's see if one of these 10 guys, maybe this guy, I don't know if this should be at the bottom. Let me go at the bottom. We'll make this sponge more effective. I don't know how it's not going to stay. Maybe. This is obviously fluid. I mean, pressed. Because I'm trying to do this rubber thingy on my stick so that I don't give it stick drift so easily, but it's also it moves too easily and it's sensitive but completely wrong or bad. There's no real diagonals. Now on top, even on top. So, yeah. That seems like sponge does give away things. Now I'll have to tweak calibration. Anyway, I'll have to connect to the just want to listen to some stuff.
That's what I've secretly wondered, or not so secretly wondered, but you know,
yeah, that was no secret when it came out. It was they got some. It wasn't just Gatsby. There was other projects involved with it. Yeah, and who knows? They could have bought it for $1. We don't know. It was undisclosed.
Know. Yeah, undisclosed. So you don't know. So I've said it multiple times, but I wish we used like home real estate lingo for acquisitions and mergers. Like it was a short sale, it was a foreclosure, it was a something like that. But anyway, I don't care actually.
Well, that's the kind of thing we talk about in the Discord, though. Kind of fun. People always sharing hot drama links. Well, part of the culture of the Shout Talk show, I'd say.
Yeah, we got to get the hot drama cooking. So
always fun for that kind of thing. Absolutely.
The gear channel is super expensive because somebody will post something and then you have to buy it. Basically, that's how it goes.
Yeah, not a lot of super inexpensive things in the gear channel. I'll say.
Gear channel is pretty. It'll cost you. So that was an expensive adventure we're all going on.
Old Simeon Griggs here from the mailbag.
Ooh,
I wanted. This isn't super new. I've been keep wanting to bring this one up because I think there's a new term in here that I really like. His new thing is, I have a new marketing tactic called the spicy slug. What do you think? I used to do this once in a while, and I think if I ever, started in a new CSS tricks or something, which is of course something I'm required to fantasize about in the future, I would have like a pre-commit or a pre-publish button thing. WordPress supports this too. I'm sure other CMSs do too. Is before you're actually allowed to hit publish, or you hit publish and then it runs some checks. And then it's like, did you do the SEO stuff? Did you get the social media set up correctly on this? Did you blah, blah, blah? One of them would be, did you give it a spicy slug? A slug being the URL thing, So how does yours work? So can you pick it exactly? Do you have to pick it, or does it auto-generate it based on the title of?
I can pick it. I can pick it whatever I want. It's basically the file name in like a static site.
The file name.
Yeah.
Oh, so the title of the blog. I see. So you pick it by naming the file, and the name of the file has nothing to do with the title of the post.
Yeah, I could like name it whatever. React is stupid, and then it's about like Vue or something,
So you have to pick the slug. You have no choice because you have to name the file, so you have to pick the slug.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So your latest post here about chips, real good blogging, Dave.
Thanks. I channeled my inner Chris Coyer a little bit.
Yeah. This is what I'm here for. So you had to name a file quick-thoughts-on-chips.md or spaces, maybe. Who knows what the little internal machine does to make it URL compatible. And then, but you just happened to name this blog post Quick Thoughts on Chips too. But you could have just named it chips.md, and then the slug would have been chips.
Yep. And so I use the tool called Jekyll Publish, so I can type like bundle exec Jekyll, which I have a shortcut called Jek, J-E-K.
Okay.
Jek draft, and then I do quotes and say Quick Thoughts on Chips, and then it'll create drafts, Quick Thoughts on Chips. And then I can say Jek Publish drafts Quick Thoughts on Chips, and it will go through and add like the published date, and then it'll like prepend the date to the URL too, because you need that in Jekyll, like 2023 whatever 8/20,
Oh yeah, okay. So that date comes from like physical
the file name. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just the limitation of like file based, but I have this little tool called Jekyll Publish, I think is what it's called, and that's just cool. Kind of automates that. And I would write that bash script for anything I use. I think I would just like, if I switch to Astro or if I switch to 11D, I would absolutely report that script over to something. So
interesting. That's a little difference between me. I would find some other way to do it that's not like I could write the bash script if I have to, but I'd probably be like, I'm gonna do it in Raycast or something, just on purpose to avoid the damn command line.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Yeah, Raycast would actually be a really good option, but I found, anyway, not to turn this into the Raycast show, I feel like Raycast is really bad at surfing my file system. I feel like it just like files. I would like to not do that.
Wasn't Josh saying in the Discord that it's that the other one is better? Alfred is better.
I feel like Alfred is better at files, like file surfing. So
yeah,
because I'll like even like look for a file I know the name of, and it's like, did you mean Xcode project? Sample.xcode, and I'm just like, no, buddy, I don't use that one. Okay, did you mean header.c? No, I didn't mean that one, guy. No. So.
Well, anyway, the spicy slug, though, just to come full circle, is when you don't, pick the obvious slug for your blog post. Like, Dave, you should have picked, for example, eat Doritos outside. Or eat nacho cheese Doritos outside. And that way it's almost like it's not spicy in this case. It's just kind of like an extra little bonus content. It's almost like the alt text of a XKCD comic or something.
I like it. I like that. because occasionally I'll see people's spicy slugs, like like I think what Josh, I'm gonna Collinsworth triple threat. If you go to his things you forgot or never knew because of React, which was very hot drama, very good post. But the spicy slug is antiquated React, so.
That's a perfect spicy slug, you know?
Yeah, it got me. I was like, I'm going to click it, you know? So, yeah, it was.
That makes me think of because it's pretty short, it makes me think of the opposite sometimes too, when people pick like a ridiculously long slug that's like an entire sentence, or a short slug and then make the blog post ridiculously long. I feel like once every 6 months, you should do like the blog post where the entire paragraph is in the title field, you know? I think that's fun.
That's good. That should be. I do have one.
Can't do it too much because people will just unsubscribe, but it's just a little eye catcher. You know, it's like if you could make the title orange. Well, you can't, but you can do this.
I have a post I'm working on. Been working on it for months. It's called MDX with web components, and it. The post is. I'll read it to you here. Just use regular Markdown.
Because Markdown supports HTML and web components are HTML, so why the hell do you need MDX is the point?
Yeah. Basically. Yeah, you don't need all that junk. You just script tag and go. So there you go.
I always was surprised by it because part of me is like, oh my God, some people that really lean into MDX hard, and I'm thinking of, what's his name? Josh Komau.
Yeah.
Great. This blog is amazing. And he puts all these incredible interactive demos inside of it, and it feels like React. It feels like Josh made a little React component with all its little use states and sliders, and you know, makes a little interactive thing, and then he gets a chance to slot it into a blog post because MDX. Doesn't have to be. You could have done that same thing with a web component, you know. A little isolated interactive component works anywhere, yada yada.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a place to bind some interactivity, you know? And anyway, it's just a silly little joke, so.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Hey, let's make blogs weird again, you know? Just post weird things.
Yeah.
Your thesis on chips. So, whatever you got going on.
You know, there's so much change in CSS, just to change the subject just a tiny little bit, that you see it asked a lot, you know, like every other month you hear Jen Simmons asking around, so correctly, as her job is, asking for feedback. I'm like, now what's next, you know? She's always like, this is what we shipped, look at all of this amazing stuff, what next? What do you want to see? What do you want to see? What do you want to see? I feel like she's constantly building and refining lists of what real world web designers want, you know, and you see that from Google folks too. We got it from Adam the other day, like, okay, what do you want? What kind of UI could we help build better, and that kind of thing. Happy to chime in with what's ever on my mind, you know, just only because we tend to get it. So like, it's usually worth a little brain power in saying it, because, you know, the last few years, it's like, wow, ask and you shall receive, huh? One of the ones I mentioned the last time he asked, it occurred to me, I can't remember why exactly, but they were on my mind again, is regions. There was a weird little period in CSS history where Adobe was when they were doing kind of web standard Z work. It seems like more than they do now. I don't know if that's fair or not, but they had a little period in Adobe's life where they were a little hot and heavy with being involved with standards and browsers and stuff. And it made sense that Adobe was working on it, because think of a tool like Adobe InDesign, which is famous for doing something like a book layout, multi-page thing. If you're going to, you know, the printing world lives in this. Oh, I'm going to do a 16-page, you know, printed, full-color, foldable, saddle-stitched thing about health insurance, and I'm going to mail it out to, you know, people between 60 and 70 years old, you know, whatever. That was the world I lived in for a long time. There's only one piece of software left anymore that people do that in, and it's Adobe InDesign, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's entirely fair. You know, Quark lived in that world for a long time. It might still exist.
Corel
Probably not. Sure, yeah. But there's a fundamental thing that's built into software like that is flow. I can make a text box anywhere the heck I want, and make another text box totally somewhere else in a document on a different page. It has the concept of pages. And I can just draw a line between them and say, when the text leaves that one box, go flow into this other box. Mm-hmm. It's just seemingly not even difficult thing for that piece of software to do. They just wrote the software to do that. It makes perfect sense. Of course, when you're laying out a book, if you edit a paragraph on page 3, it pushes the flow of the book further. It might even make another page if it needs to. It's just a very natural, normal thing to do when setting something like a book or a brochure or anything like that. And that's what Adobe was working on, is they crafted up some CSS properties and values that said, hey, this element, when it overflows, flow into this other element. That was back even before we had CSS Grid. I think it was being thought about in terms of CSS Grid even then. But it didn't have to be. It wasn't a prerequisite.
Yeah, I want to say like 2011-ish is where I'm putting it.
And oh, gosh. Was it that long ago? Wow. Even then, though, but now that we have CSS Grid, now it makes a lot more sense. Or at least some more sense to me. Like, this grid area should flow to this other grid area. Even if it's as simple as a left side and a right side, like a book would be. So I thought it had legs then. I was sad about it the whole time it was gone. I don't think anybody's working on it, but it's on my little list as far as like things I'd like to see CSS do. I'm sure it's very complicated. I have no doubt that this is no small task, although probably smaller in scope than, say, container queries, which we got. So, maybe all that will kind of happen. But then it got me thinking about, okay, well, what do people do when they want to put a book online then now? And I think about it because, like, let's say in my future someday I decide to write a book. I'm going to do it on the web because I'm a web guy and I like the idea of writing in Markdown or something. Mm-hmm. And then, but I also like the idea of like a page. Like, why can't I make a page, say, Dave, 50, on a desktop anyway, like 50 viewport units wide, because I'm trying to limit the line length, like a single column kind of thing. But then have a top and a bottom to the page, not just infinite flow like an article, but I'm looking at a page. And then I can scroll down and then there's another page. Like, I want a white box and then a little divide in between and then another white box. Like, I want the flow to go from the white box on top to the white box on the bottom. There's really no way to do that. There's no way to say flow from this box to that box. Mm-hmm. And I just think that would be kind of nice.
Because if you had just like a grid column interrupted by decorators or whatever you want to do, it'd be cool if like content could just flow to the next box rather than like you wrapping another div to like explicitly chuck in the thing.
Yeah.
Like, you could create a vertical rhythm that you couldn't otherwise, I always wanted it for like ads, like to push ads to a different place. Like, I don't know, like in this viewport, the ad block is only, 1,000 pixels, or 200 pixels tall. So if your content's more than that, let's just push it down. You get pushed to the next block or whatever,
Right.
I had like a bunch of ideas at the time. I feel like it got killed. I was going to post an article. Do you remember the List Apart article by Hakim William Lee, the one of the guys who made CSS? Mm-hmm. He said CSS regions considered harmful in 2014.
Oh, I remember.
I did not like this post, and I was very mad. I think I made some enemies. I was very disrespectful to one of the guys who made CSS.
Me too.
Opera had a competing spec. I think he was at Opera, right? CTO of Opera. Opera had a competing spec for like paged content, basically. Like, you basically like would say like, or CSS multi-column, but you'd be basically. They had the thing where you could be like, this is page 2, this is page 3, I was like, why are we advocating for a thing that doesn't exist when regions is in a browser? Like, you could use it in I guess WebKit was probably where it was used, or when Chrome was on WebKit probably. But like, we had like a prototype of it and then it just got shot down, and it was just like, man, we were so close to having it, Like, I don't know. you could just say like, here's a content brick and here's a ad brick, and now you just go figure it out. Website, like that would be cool, right? So, but they didn't allow that. So, I was that post kind of cut the sales. I feel like that was I don't know.
It did, and I'll admit, maybe dude was right. I don't know. I can't, you can't A/B test the past or whatever, like they say. So, yeah. But still, I want it now. I want it 10 years later. Interesting one. I put a GitHub repo here too. A little piece of tech from Robin Sloan, great author. I really like Robin. He wrote this wonderful book, Mr. Penumbra's Midnight Bookstore or something like that.
24-hour bookshop, yeah.
24-hour bookshop. Yeah, and then wrote another book in that universe, has written other books, makes olive oil. I don't know, I feel like I've given this intro a number of times, but he just gives off good vibes to me. And a little bit of a coder as well. I just think, how fun is that to read a book from somebody that actually knows technology, and writes it and publishes it and has open source repos. I just think that's cool. Anyway, has this demo of one called Perfect Edition that's like, hey, let's say you were going to publish a book on the web. Wouldn't it be nice to start with somebody who's thought about this to some degree? And the approach that Robin took with this GitHub repo called Perfect Edition, again, we'll link it up, is to use the multi-column CSS layout. So because that does have kind of like rectangle to rectangle flow.
Yeah,
but horizontally, not any other way. And so you can kind of just say columns auto, and it will just make as many columns. It'll make 5,000 columns if it needs to, whatever, as long as there's enough width there to handle it. So there's probably a little JavaScript or something that helps with width. I don't even know. Maybe it doesn't. And then all this thing does is like bind like the space bar and clicks and stuff to shift the page over, and kind of like gray out the edges of the column that you're not viewing right now. So it's pretty lightweight and a pretty kind of a cool looking way to present a book. That's the kind of thing I'm interested in. If you write a book, I just kind of feel like the presentation of it should look book-like. That you should have like a design opportunity to make it feel a little different than you're just like reading a long blog post.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you. I don't know. Adactio does some books, right? Resilient web design.
Oh, that's like right.
Yeah. It would be nice if you had a little more, style controller, a little more book-like vibes than just a long column of text,
I thought I'd do it. This all barely qualifies as a book, but I wanted to do something related to CSS tricks. So at one point I did like the greatest CSS tricks, and I called it Volume 1 for CSS tricks, thinking I'd do multiple versions of them over time. But it ended up just being a little bit more blog post-like. I just grouped up the best ones, gave it a little bit of a unique design, but never really solved how to present each chapter uniquely. I was overall pleased with it, though, especially the writing process. I just really like writing in the tools that I already know, rather than having to write in Markdown, which I don't do very often, or write in Design or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, resilient web design. Yeah, we should link that up too. Pretty cool. Our another friend of the show, Matt Marquis, his JavaScript for Web Designers book for A Book Apart was recently published on the web as well, and does have a very kind of cool book-like feel to it, but does just do this long single column down the middle feel. Miraculously typeset like pretty much exactly like the book is.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Which makes me wonder, did they set it on the web and then
good question.
Convert it to print, or did somebody set it for print and then replicated it pretty darn nicely on the web? But it looks great.
Yeah, no, it looks wonderful. Yeah, the column of content isn't bad, especially if you're reading on an iPad or whatever, but I could also see I refreshed or whatever, close the browser, and now I'm back at the top. Where was I? I have to scroll down.
That's the thing. Yeah. What do you keep the tab open or what? Not that regions helps with that necessarily, but it's just stuck in my mind that to design a page feels so nice. I want that somehow on the web.
Yeah.
We should shout out Mr. Ethan has a new book.
Ethan has a new book.
You deserve a tech union. Congratulations, buddy. I'm sure that was a big journey. You know, Ethan, of course, known for the invention of responsive web design, wrote a couple books and has spoken endlessly on that subject. Now, doing something very different and talking about, you know, the industry and the labor movement and stuff. Just super different. So I imagine that's tough.
Yeah, I just started reading it this weekend. I mean, so far so good. So it's interesting. I'd love to have him on here and talk to him about it, but because it's this weird like tangential thing, like where, you know, obviously most places don't have a union and they build websites just fine, but like, what would it be like if more places had it, you know? Like, and that's something interesting to think about, you know? Would it be more ethical, more equitable, more, you know, like, you know, and is that the right move for the industry? I don't know. You know, I'm sure people have predispositions, politically charged predispositions. So I am lucky to sit right in the middle. So, and I live in a state that like won't let you have one, I guess, or it's a right to work state.
I'm pretty middly too. My dad was a union boss. He was a union president of his local for a while, which predisposes me to thinking that is all a good idea. Fought for people's jobs, was a very big deal to him in his life. Yeah, at the same time, I run this small business, and I'm not opposed to it. I don't feel like particularly attached to all that. You know, like are my 4 employees going to make a union? I mean, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think about like the SAG-AFTRA thing going on, or a WGA Writers Guild thing going on, you know. We're in a weird state where like movie, TV production has been paused. So we're just going to have this really weird dearth of movies. Even like when it starts like cycling back up again, it's going to take a while, you know, like there's not going to be new content till like 2024, you know? And so...
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, though. Does it just mean that YouTube is going to kick ass, though? Or that there'll be a lot better podcasts or something?
MILF Island or whatever is going to come out, and it's just, you know, reality shows kind of fill the gap, you know? So I think like it'll be... Or there's probably some stuff that's like half cooked, you know? They started on something and then had to shut down or whatever, you know? But anyway, but it's just interesting how like one of the points they're arguing about is like, should AI be able to take my job? You know, like if I'm an extra in this thing, you don't just get to use my face in any movie you want, you know, like, and so, but the like movie execs are like, you know, it'd be cheap is like not paying extras, you know, and I'm just like, dang, that's a hard. Like business wise, I'm like, yeah, randomly generated people is a lot easier than like sourcing humans to come show up and paychecks and SAG credits and stuff like that. But then it's also just like, if you're an actor and you're like, I did one movie and now I'm in 1,000 movies and I don't get paid for it. That stinks, you know? That's anyway. That's illegal. I don't know. That's wrong. So anyway, that's just weird what they're fighting over. And I don't know. I think it's good they're having the big fight about AI and all that, you know, accreditation, and, you know, Sarah Silverman's fighting for like, you can't just use my voice and tone later. Like, I'm going to sue you. So very interesting times we live in. So, but they wouldn't be able to do that without a union, you know, like they would have to get everybody to get upset, you know, like, hey, everyone sign this petition to say you're upset, you know, and movie stars are.
That's a very good point. Any leverage that they have now, and even now it's like a struggle to get it to work. Man, if you didn't have that, which is about as strong an arm as you can possibly be, and it's still not like obviously working. Way. Yeah. It would have never worked before.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd have no tools in the tool chest to fight a higher up decision, you know? So,
yeah.
Very interesting. So,
let's play. We have an audio one here from great question asker, Simi de Klerk here. I think we'll play it for the show.
Disclaimer. I'm a hobby developer who's worked mostly with React and Next.js and a little bit with Flask and Jinja. I'd love to hear your thoughts on component libraries like React or Vue versus templating languages like PHP, Rails, and Jinja/Flask. My sense is that they're very similar in that both are ways of expressing how to turn data into HTML and both have composition concepts. I get that component libraries update the DOM dynamically, whereas templating languages traditionally update the DOM through full page refreshes only. But is that the only real difference? I get the sense that component libraries also lean somewhat harder into the use many components and compose them together mindset, whereas that is present in templating languages, but not as encouraged. Or is that just my perception because I'm not that familiar with the templating language world? This came to mind for me again recently with the hype around Next 13 and React Server components. The Next 13 marketing is self-aware that they've sort of now recreated PHP or Rails, but with React as a templating language. However, even there, it feels like there's a bit of subtext of we've been using React for so many years and we've only just recently realized that we could use it as a backend templating language because it's very similar. Finally, while on Next 13, their marketing had the "see, now Next 13 is just like PHP or Ruby" feel. But here I felt like I could have leaned a little bit more into the, yes, it's a backend templating language now like Rails, but it still has the dynamic client components and smooth page transitions by default of React and Next of old. Keen to hear your thoughts on all of this. Love the show. Cheers, Simi.
Can you do exactly what you can do in Vue in PHP, aside from the DOM, the live DOM stuff? I feel like
so. I had to look it up while Sammy was asking. But so Jinja is a Python-based like templating language, and Flask I think is a wrapper around that to make it, I guess, a little more, I guess, routing, adding features like that, redirects. So it's a bit of a meta framework around the templating system of Jinja. Is that okay?
Sure.
We all feel like, pretty good?
Yep. like you can use nunjucks and then 11D as a wrapper around it to make it more useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and this is, it's kind of a mustachy style, syntax for Python. So,
okay. So now you're going to build a website. You're going to build a website for book reviews. So you're going to have a template called book, and a book is going to have the photo and the review and the star rating and the publisher and the date published and all this kind of information about it. If you're going to write that in Vue, you're going to just make some choices about how to break that up into smaller components. You might have a book cover component. You might have a date component that does specific things for the date. I feel like you'd make some choices about how to break that up. And I think this is what Simi's wondering, and I've been long curious about the same questions. Like, do you make the same choices when you're doing it with a server-side only component thing? And I think you don't. And I don't know why exactly, but I've tried to think this way. Like, I think if you looked at the code for the friggin' Shop Talk Show website, which is WordPress, you'd see me trying to break the thing up into tiny reusable components. Like, I have a folder that I just called like components, maybe, or parts. Sometimes I call it parts.
Yeah, parts, yeah.
And I try to make little PHP templates that I can then call. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, but a little bit unfortunately, like there's no like ESM for PHP. You just call an include statement, but the include statement doesn't give you the opportunity to pass in props really. So you're like setting global variables and then calling the template and letting the global variables populate what happens in the template. That's changed a bit. I think there's answers to that, but it's just different. Like, because it doesn't give you quite the component ergonomics like you'd get in Vue, you end up just deciding to break it up differently.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like the sort of the addition of props, which exists in some things, like Jekyll includes can accept props, little known fact, but they're cool. Like, you know, if I have a star rating component for my book review, right? Ideally, I go star rating, and then I just pass it a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 4.5, and then the component figures it out. Whereas like in PHP or a big loop, like you're just gonna, it's almost like explicit versus implicit assignment. Like you're sort of like just saying like, hey, I expect this to be in the post loop, and so I'm just gonna call post and hope that shows up, you know? And so like, and whereas like in a JS component, you're more like, hey, no, the post is this post. Like I'm going to send that whole thing down to you. Or more accurately, I'm just going to send you the number 5 and you just show me what 5 stars looks like.
I think that's just better. I hate to say it, but it just is. I think that
well, it means you can use your star rating outside of the post, you know, like you can use it on your user rating or your comment, you know, rating.
Right.
And so like you're not like, it dodges a variable naming, like all the variable naming is at that component level. So I think you architect it a little more differently. You get a little more usability.
Yeah, because you know, Ruby helped a little bit more because they were eventually started taking local. They even had a different name for it, but it's essentially a local variable that you pass to whatever their version of include is. It wasn't called include, a partial. Yeah. Herb, a little bit better. Or you know, in PHP you could write a function. You could write a function called show book or something, and show book would take parameters that then you accepted, and that you would just assume that it returns HTML, I guess. I didn't feel like anybody did that though.
Yeah, I mean, but that's essentially what the JavaScript's doing. Is it creates a component that accepts these parameters and then renders out basically. So yeah, I mean it's different but the same sort of. It's like breaking up stuff into smaller chunks. Yes, that is it. But is it? But the component mentality sort of inverts the, what do they call it? The inversion of control. And you basically are just sort of like saying explicitly, this has 5 stars, 4.5 stars. You're not saying like, hey, just assume post is in this loop and render that out. So I don't know enough about Jinja or Flask to know if they cover that for you. Maybe they allow props and maybe it's exactly the same, but that would be the big distinction, I think, for me. So
yeah, I want to ask GitHub how many star-rating.php files are there on all of GitHub, and how many star-rating.js files are there on all of GitHub?
Yeah, it's probably a 1,000 to 1 or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe that's just a guess, but I feel like the same way is that the JavaScript leans into that a little harder, and especially now that we've got TypeScript and the what you pass in can be typed and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, well it's fun to think about.
Yeah.
That's why I've always thought, like, I don't know, that WordPress should lean into that harder. Like, I want to build sites with components, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Well, hey, have you heard the good news about web components?
Yeah. All right, we need to do another web components
show. You just get a flavor of components, but you can still write your PHP or whatever, your other stuff all the same. So anyway.
Yeah.
Even though I advocate for web components, I do still have questions. So anyway, maybe need somebody on the show.
All right, well, good stuff. We got through many things.
Got through some questions. Hey, as usual, send us your questions, everybody, or your hot dramas. We appreciate that. We'll talk about that. If you got some spicy slugs we need to know about, please send those over. We enjoy those. And follow us on the X or the Mastodon. I really don't know anymore. And then join us over in the Discord. I just realized Twitter Twitter changed TweetDeck, which was how I tweeted out the Shop Talk stuff. So we might not be able to tweet anymore. But anyway, we'll figure that out as time goes on. But then, but join us in the Discord. That's where things are happening. Patreon.com/ShopTalkShow. Chris, anything else you'd like to say?
Just at ShopTalkShow.com.
Hey there, Shopomaniacs. You're listening to another analog episode of the Shop Talk Show. I'm Dave, and with me is Chris. Hey, take it away, Chris. Lazy John, man, that's great. I was gonna try to sing over it. I don't know the words of that song, but I was gonna mix them up. It was gonna be like, I went down to the river and drank a bottle of wine or something. Just kind of like. But knowing latency and the effects of a online recording product, I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, can't be done. Although, was it you sent me? Somebody sent me a thing like during the pandemic that was like, we solved this basically, but it required having some hardware.
Oh, okay, interesting.
You had to get a box in your office, and there was literally geographic concerns, like you had to be like, I could do it with somebody in Seattle here from Bend because it was close enough that they could kind of guarantee it, but across the world wasn't happening. But so you could and if you sent them to everybody in your band, they could do multiple people, do a whole band thing. It's cool that tech stepped in there and kind of made it happen. It makes me think of that like the email, the 500-mile email or whatever. I'm sure you've read that story.
I love that bug. Where somebody like at Berkeley or something or MIT was like, hey, I can send emails. It's all working unless I try to send it over 500 miles. And they were like, excuse me? That's not true.
But it turned out to be true because of some weird timeout or something. I can't remember the details. It's actually better to forget and then reread that story. So it's awesome next time.
Yeah. That's probably true with most stories, huh? It's fun to forget the ending, so you're like, oh yeah, that's cool, or like a big chunk of it. I don't know. Maybe that's why I watch Goonies every time. I don't know. I can quote it end to end, but I still like, oh yeah, that part's funny. So that's good. So
heck yeah. Well, just a normal week, just me and you.
Hanging out.
My Miranda calls it the Christopher and David Show.
Ooh, good. That's good.
That's how she refers to Shop Talk Show. Christopher and David Show has a little hip shuffle that goes with it.
My wife almost knows when we record this. We change it up a little bit here and there, so she's always confused. But she was like, the kids get out at like 1, so and I was like, no, I only podcast till 12, so
all good.
It's fine. I'll take the kids. It's fine. So anyway,
all good. Yeah, it's summer. A lot of surprise childcare.
Camps. We go back to school stuff. Anyway, it's really hot, but yeah, been heading back to school and stuff. So like, pretty exciting over here in Austin, Texas. So
yeah,
when you're listening to this, my children will be in school. That has no bearing on your life, but that is a huge one on my life. Because now childcare is solved and free. So
heck yeah. Yeah, even if it's only 6 hours or however long kids go to school these days, but it's okay. Yeah, we've been loading up the camps too, doing what we can.
You got to survive the summer. So
there's lots of software to talk about. God, I could talk about software forever. It's just on the mind. Not that it shouldn't always be,
you
but...
want to talk about how Apple Numbers is total trash? I could probably do a whole hour on this thing.
No. I unfortunately had a good experience the other day where
really?
Well, there's a website with a table on it, right? Like a table element. And I really wanted to add up the columns in one of the columns of the table. But the website didn't feature that. There's no
quick HTML way to do it. Maybe I could have written a clever query selector and done a little JavaScript math or something. I'm like, why is this so hard? But I selected, just from the upper left, click and hold my mouse and just copied down to the bottom right of the table. And I was just like, I bet numbers will just know what I mean when I hit paste.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? And it just totally did, and then and then it's 1 second to just select that row, one cell after the end of the last row, and then hit equals, and then drag your mouse up the column and be like, add all those things up. And it did it just fine. So, but that is a tiny little thing. I'm not trying to actually really truly use the software, which I don't know what your pain is, but
this is back to tech. We have a memory issue in Luro, like a cron job that runs production only is timing out, or it's saying keep allocation used or whatever, and so it just crashes it. So it's like a production only bug hooked up to a cron job, and yikes. So
the worst kind of bug.
The worst, sure. The most hard to reproduce, still don't quite have a repro locally and stuff like that, because I'm not going to be able to max out my MacBook Pro, probably can't, but whatever, garbage Intel.
But it has to do with files somehow, you think?
Yeah, a file read, and I think it's just reading a very giant file and falling over. So that's sort of what we're having to deal with. But anyway, we've gotten to the point where debugging memory checkpoints to just make sure we have no leaks and stuff like that. So we're logging out process.memory usage, I think is what it is, or process, in Node, and tracking all these numbers. I have a table of 1,600 rows for this one loop, right? Or for this one pass. And I dump it into numbers, right? And it's actually 5 values from process memory usage: the RSS, the heap total, the heap used, the 2 other ones. Anyway, I don't care about those other ones. They're just kind of allocation things. So I'm looking at these values, and they're all in bytes. So it's 70 million bytes, and I'm just it'd be so cool if I could just read this in megabytes or kilobytes or whatever. Something simpler than a 12-digit number. And so but Apple Numbers doesn't let you format like that. I feel any software would let me figure that out. Notion probably works, bytes to kilobytes, or I write a little formula or something. Anyway, it's just I guess I could get more savvy with Apple or whatever and figure it out. But anyway, it was just frustrating. It was just I bet other software does this just fine. So lets me write a custom formatter that's megabyte. I couldn't find anything. There's no docs about Apple Numbers. The website is literally a page. So anything is in the Apple
customer support
forum. Yeah, there's no customer support. There's no people making TikToks about how to get the most out of Apple Numbers. There's nothing. So anyway, that's my gripe. It could be. I think it does get an upgrade here in the next OS version. So we'll see. We'll see if they can redeem it. So
yeah. Isn't that funny that the bigger the software, the almost guaranteed worse the service is? You can't get somebody from Google on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening, right? Actually, remember when they sold their domains business? That's all still kind of happening. I think they sold to Squarespace and whatever. Did you see Matt Mullenweg was salty about it? He's like, I should have bid on that. Which I'm like, yeah, you should have. That would have been better. Although people would have had the same opinion.
Probably would have gone over better. Nah, I think it would have gone over better.
Better?
So,
yeah, maybe. But people were saying, well, part of the reason is because you kind of have to have customer support for a domain service. That's so important. You can't just be yeah, good luck with your DNS. Hope that works out for you. There needs to be customer support of some kind, which you'd think would be true for your, business email or whatever too, but just somehow isn't. I don't know. If you're having trouble with your entire company's email, too bad, I guess. They probably have some semblance of customer support, but I wouldn't assume that I could talk to somebody from Google. That's not going to happen. Facebook too. I had a buddy whose Facebook account got hacked, And he's like, well, I'm me though, so surely there's some way, something. Can I send you my driver's license? Something to unactivate. And it's like, no, there's no process, there's no email, there's no phone number, there's absolutely no way. I'm sure if you went and sat a chair outside of their offices, they would just call the police on you or something. Like, you're not getting your account back. It's too bad.
That happened to my friend. His account got hacked. Started posting the bad porn, the worst one, and he just was like, this sucks, you know, and his account was shut down, deleted, basically. He can't get back to it. All his friends, all his, like, photos and stuff like that for years is just gone. Just gone. So,
yeah, I don't know. It can be tricky, you know, if you wrote to us at CodePen and on a free account, it's like, what do we have to verify you? Like, you could send me your driver's license, but there's nothing I can compare the details on your driver's license against to know that that was you who originally made that account. So it's hard. If you paid, you're in forever. Well, I can absolutely do it. We can check the credit card details. You know, there's a trail we have that leads directly to you, so you just never have that problem. Which means you should go pro on CodePen.
Yeah, like, hey man, if you want to pay me money for Luro, I'll like personally do a SQL dump of all your stuff every night. Right. It's like, yeah, like you pay me money, I know who you are. Like we have an interaction, we have a paper trail. You know, like I could say like, well, give me the transaction from 22, you know, whatever. Yeah, like we could just cruise bank statements and try to verify you or something. But yeah, when it's just you're a free anonymous, that's hard to really.
Yeah, tricky. You know, at some point, do you just make a judgment call? Like if your photo is full of 10 years of photos, like of a person who matches the driver's license photo, at some point you're like, yeah, all right, here, we'll let you back in. You know, or if it matches patterns of obvious spam. Like at one day, all of a sudden it started posting nutritional supplements. What do you think happened? You know?
Right. You just got big into getting yoked and swole, dude. They had to get there.
It's got to be hard to know, but I'm sure each one of those cases then is, you know, hours of work for someone or something, and they're like, well, that doesn't make money, so why would we do that?
Right. And they ask, irony here, Facebook makes money if somebody hacks your account, and then you have to go create a new one because user signups goes up.
Yeah, true. Insidious though, because if that's a sad story, and the more of those that happen, the more people are like, you know what, forget that web app, which is the very worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard though because it's also like as the website owner or whatever, you have some responsibility, like you know, but like it's not your fault if somebody's password is password 123. You know, like I can only help so much. You know, like
speaking of big software making changes,
let's go.
Lots of stuff though, actually. Like well, let me just instead of getting scope creep immediately, I'm going to do the one. No, I'm going to do Figma. Figma launched P3 colors in Figma, which is good because it's, you know, it's design software. It runs on the web. Websites support P3 color these days. Your monitor might not, but it probably does. Monitors, you know, it was like the way that it trickled through the ecosystem, I think, was kind of like video formats and photo formats kind of first. They had kind of the most incentive to capture the most color as they could, so they did. And then displays started catching up. Well, if we have that color information, why don't we show it on the screen? Actually, it probably sells monitors because they look great when they have more and richer colors and all that. It makes for good marketing. And then the technology is catching up last. For example, CSS and other web tech need to be able to specify a color that is in that P3 color space. So all that was starting to happen. Now it's software's turn, you know, like Photoshop already supports it. So it's a little weird how it supports it, but it's in there. Interesting. And now Figma is too, and they have all sorts of challenges for supporting it though, because there's this concept of color profiles. I think you know, there's a good thread on it from the fellow who was on our show talking about OKC LCH, Audrey Sitnick, you know, was like, well, it's tricky because different people can open the file that have different needs and setups on their machine, and then color profiles was one of the ways it happened. I feel like it's this dialog box that if you've been around the web and design software for a long time, you've seen 1,000 times without even knowing it. When you used to open up a Photoshop document, there's a good chance it would tell you this document has a different color profile than the RGB color space of the current working space, blah, blah. Would you like to, convert it to your color profile, honor their color profile, throw away color profile information? And nobody knew what it meant. I'm still a little unclear, and you're just like, I don't know, one of those sounds fine.
Yeah. Whichever one you think, buddy. Yeah, like you tell me.
Yeah, which one do you think? Yeah.
Well, it's the same with fonts, right? It's like, this one doesn't have fonts, so I replaced everything with Georgia. And you're like, well,
I do care about that one.
That's not okay, but like, what's tricky is like having a font on your computer or not on your computer is kind of obvious, right? Like, it's like, oh, that's not the right font. Sometimes it's obvious, Attican's Grotesque and like, I don't know, like Helvetica. I don't really know the difference, but I'm sure there is one. But but the color profile is like, so like, you don't know. Like, I could be plugged into an external monitor that does not have it, but my laptop does have it.
Right.
Who's right? Who's got? I don't know. I think it's the monitor, but
very tricky. But all that stuff has been handled by the technology and is ready to go. That a non-support situation where the software supports that color, but the monitor doesn't. That's a good one generally, because the software can sense that situation and pulls the color back into a color space that can be shown. It's a nice fallback. Instead of just showing white or black or nothing or something, they know how to like shift the color back down into the color space. Pretty cool, really.
Yeah. I just wonder if it's like rough seas here, like, because I choose the coolest pink, the hottest pink, laser pink, right? And then Jeff opens it on his computer. That's an old bad one. Just kidding. He's a RGB basic bitch, and so he opens it, and like, it's just, and then he's like, ooh, that pink just isn't cool. I'm gonna switch to lime green because that's popping on my computer, And
right.
I got on my computer, and then it's like,
exactly, the collaborative aspects of this are rough.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to summarize this perfectly, but one of the interesting things is that even a hex code we think of in CSS now as in RGB only, and that's true for CSS. You cannot say, I want this hex code to exist in the whatever LCH color space or in P3 color or whatever, one of the other color. So it's not exactly in my brain right now, but I'm sure you can imagine what I mean.
Rec 2020, P3, Rec 2020.
Right, but there's color models and there's color spaces.
Yeah.
P3 is the space, and then you can model the color differently, and those tend to map to functions in CSS, right? Like lab is different than LCH, and there's other ones. But what does Figma do? They don't really have they don't put the OKLCH function in Figma. They just do the hex codes, Sometimes even the 8-digit ones, but that's just alpha. It doesn't matter that much. So they can display the P3 colors, but the hex code values go up into P3 space, which is a little unfortunate, because then if you copy and paste that out, it's not gonna work in CSS.
Yeah, right. That was my thing, because the hex code is S or RGB, literally, right? And
it doesn't have to be, but it is in CSS.
It is in CSS, and so it does kind of flatten the colors to some degree. I mean, you can get up into the space, I guess, in some things, like yellows maybe, but you can't, right? It more or less flattens the P3 space. Damn.
It does. It's a little weird. And here's another thing: is even the same hex code can mean different things depending on what your system supports, what your monitor supports. So Andrea is using FF0000, which is red in a hex code. That's just straight up different. That exact hex code in P3 is way more richly red.
Oh, so if I do whatever color from or whatever, it would look super different. Interesting.
Well, but it does solve the issue of like somebody else opening the same file in Figma. Mm-hmm. Like it's not going to show you two different hex codes. It's the same hex code. You know, hopefully it stops them from changing it. They're like, that doesn't look as good. I'm going to move it around, and then they're moving it around within the confines of RGB, whereas you're like, don't do that.
Yeah. It's a brain melter, man. I mean, I've tried to communicate to my coworkers how cool it is, but I don't do a great job. So I think, we'll get there eventually, but it's hard when the tools aren't there yet either. So I'm glad it's now in Figma to some degree. So
the saving grace is Andrew was a little incentivized to get you to use OKLCH.com, which I don't know. They just think it's a cool tool, and it is a cool tool. It's not like a paid thing or anything. But the cool thing is you can take that, no matter what kind of computer you have, you can take that Figma hex code, paste it into OKLCH.com and select Figma P3, and then it will like convert it to CSS. So you're not like totally screwed here or whatever.
Oh, really? Okay.
You just got to know to do that. You'd think Figma would have a slightly better story than that, unless I just have it wrong, and then someone from Figma please email me or whatever. I understand, but it does seem a little weird that you can it's like nice that Figma has P3 color in it, but like, as you know from the conference thing you were just at, they're pretty big on Figma to web design. Like they want to help that flow, that it's like a little bit of a bummer that you might grab a hex code right out of it that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. That's not good.
Yeah. Oh man, weird times, huh? Weird times.
So Tom, right, this all came from a question, believe it or not. It says, can you imagine a color space CSS property? It could be set on the root of the page or even in a meta tag. Yeah, he's excited about the color features coming to CSS, but can't help feel that there's a tricky disconnect between the design software and the web. Right. And he says, you've mentioned copy and pasteability of hex, which is no small thing. I still feel strongly about that. I feel like design software don't make the more complex color formats easy to copy and paste, then people just won't do it. I find myself even just being like, just give me a hex code because of how easy they are to grab.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but I think Tom has a good point. Like, wouldn't that be interesting if you could set the page to say this, I don't know, element, or probably the whole page is probably the way to do it, is in this other color space, then you could use hex codes that are outside of sRGB, and that would certainly help Figma's case. I don't know, that's beyond my pay grade, but
I picked a P3 orange, right? And it's the Figma P3 hex code is FB6222 FF, right? Okay. 8-digit hex code, FB6222. But then the fallback hex is FF6832. I guess I don't understand how it's punching up into this color space, but that's just my brain here. So, because if I type FB6222, I don't get the same color. I'm so confused. And then, hey, we'll figure it out one day. I don't get it. No. I don't get it, Chris. I don't get it. So, anyway.
Hard world. Yeah, indeed. Maybe we should do another one here. But interesting. I know what it's like trying to design software for designers and developers. A little tricky. A lot of stuff to catch up on there. We do have a fella, Chris Weiser.
Sorry, net gaan ek met klankreg stap bygepas.
Kan jy nou my musiek is net baie hard. Ek het 'n podcast geluister vir ons
anders. Nou gaan ek beter wees as ek op headset. Sorry, ek soek 'n YouTube channel vir. Ek het net die teks gemis, man. Sê gou weer vir my.
Dis selfs woord, dis selfs my naam en ek aan die ander kant. Dis Braal.
Okay. Okay, spel hom gou vir my.
So as jy net sit youtube.com/ dan die @sign, dan gaan jy bbrrraaapp.
Search hom, né?
Dus double B, triple R, triple A, double P. Dus braap. Dus wat het
ik heb hem gekregen. Cool, ja, ik kan zien je stream. Kijk op dat.
Ons game was op stream. Ek het daai game af gegooid want dit is nie my myne account hier nie. My ek kan sê asof ek beter sou gedoen het as my ander account as my ek besig om die pryse te sit net om jy weet goeders te wen in die shop.
Ja, nee, ek wil graag subscribe in die kanaal om te support man.
Ja, hoor, dit sal goed wees. As jy baie keer 'n private persoonlike kanaal het, tussen 8 en 11.
Okay, wil jy in-game double try?
Ja, sure.
Sorry, vanaand is my hand nie gewerk. Dit is gewoonlik so erg nie.
Ja, dit mag. Ek het nie goed gepleis nie, maar ek het plat gepleis.
Nee, donder, ek is 'n goud 2, goud 3.
Ek gaan 'n bietjie kompeterend wees. Maar ek kan probeer, ek gaan dit nie.
Dis try.
En jy sê dit op Suid-Afrikaanse server.
Ja, anders is die ping te hoog.
Ja, maar net seker, ek weet nie hoe lank die game al ken.
Weet jy wat, ek speel aan en af sommer die kinders.
Okay, nice. Ek sê paar van ander mense wat ek.
Ja.
Wish, een van my grootste Rocketeer vriende. Sy naam is Wish was better. Hy was so 40 something. Maar hy was in die begin, is hy altyd weer gemaak het vir die kinders.
Yep. Ja, ons doen dit ook maar. Mense kom. Nice. Donder. Ja, ek het 'n bietjie rondgekrap. Jo, alle my ligheid. Sien, ek kan nie dit doen nie. Ja. Yes, maar ek kry tyd. Ek het net by die huis gekom vir die werk al.
Ja, for sure. Dit wil net speel, maar dit is lekker.
Ja. Kan jy ek agter?
So wat ek doen is net in games set, dan hoef ek al te training en ek kan keer ja, maar as aerial training, wat die ingebouw is in Afrika.
Ja.
En dan staat 3 levels. Winner, medium, pro, maar dit gaat springen daar in klik, dat weet ik niet terecht.
Nee, zo.
Maar ik heb hier de meisjes, ik heb van de ochtend
Ja, ek is op PC.
En maar en met keyboard en
Ja.
Ja, nee, dit is goed.
Ek weet nie, ek vind dit makliker as met die controller uit. Alhoewel ek speel F1 en daai tipe goed op die controller, dit is net baie makliker.
Ek het actually controller uitgekocht vir die game.
Gaan jy?
Net vir Rocketeer.
Okay.
En ek het actually gespeel sinds ek en dan waar ek het al paar controllers.
Ek vir die net, gaan jy? Okay, jy het hom? Of nie, hy het hom. Jo. Ja, jy is reg, hierdie time, nee, hierdie flat lobbies is bietjie meer ingewikkeld.
Ja, dit is nou nog nie full on levels, ek speel, my ander account is ek ook,
ja, ne?
Ek goud te doen. Maar ek het my baas,
Oh, nice.
Ek speel dit met my ander vrienden, allemaal en dan, dit is funny, ek goud en 3 flat.
Ek het nog nooit hoor het goud wegkom. Nooit.
Maar dit is like, ja, hulle verloor, hulle net wen. Dat is maar hier, hulle dat jy goud. Maar ek
ja, dit is bad, hè.
Ek maar net myself. Hulle is hard.
Kan jy? Nee, ek het actually net voor ek teen jou gespoed het, dus ek afgerank van goud 1 af terug na Oktober 3 toe. Dit is okay, dit is nou nie nice nie.
Ja, dit is nie nice.
Nice. Well done. Well done.
Right pass.
Ek sê nie as jy attempt het nie, ek sê die meer opgeindig het.
Maar dit is groundplay moet nie dit onderskat nie. As jy die
Ja, jy moet eintlik maar net slim wees, dis die ding.
baie goed op dat ook jy moet sê. Betekent dat vir jou en dan weer
Pas. Ek gaan net sien. Okay. Ja, ik was eigenlijk weer net gebleven. Je doet?
Als al meer dan een derde is, de derde van het veld.
Ja.
Dan geef het wel een plek om te spelen.
Ja, of alles je kan eerder ook. Ik het ook?
Ja, maar zelfs die bal in de hoofd. Ja, maar hulle keer die bal en jij is achter en ek voor en hy land in die middel. Ja, maar nou is het op. Maar dan keer het de hele tijd over die bal speel, voordat hij gaat scoren. Ja, weet je, nice.
Oh, hier is met de kom. Wel done. Oeh. Ja, toen maar je bent er echt bij geweest. Kan jij? Kan je nou weer op? Nice. Oh, damn it. Ik zie ek het gewoon daar nie. Ek het gewoon aan Grand Play. Oh, van net nie. Jesus. Alsjeblieft, dank je bedankt. Yo. Oh, met de kom. Well done, well done. Dus ja, ek kry party daar wat ek soos rarig nie bad speel nie en dan kry ek ander daar wat ek soos net lucky shot het. En dan trek daar soos vandag.
Ja, dit gebeur maar.
Kan jy?
Stop the fact you're the presentation.
Ja. Gaan vir die demo? Yes, ja. Maar een of ander rede as ek tap op my keyboard, dan gaan hy die game uit. Jy weet wanneer jy druk tab. Die tab button.
Jy alt knop nie dalk start.
Miskien.
Druk jy dalk alt tab.
Nee, is net tab.
Is jy goed?
Ja. Ja, ek moet eintlik eens gaan kyk na my keybind.
Dalk 'n Windows.
Sorry, niet tab, nie, caps lock. Caps lock, dis 'n caps lock druk.
Of speel ja, en die Steam besig om te raak.
Nee, net Epic.
Ek weet dat die controllers op Steam baie
Ah! Yes, ek was net te ver. Fuck.
Double tap. Ek kan dit nie sien. As ek het doen, is dit 'n lucky of 'n angle.
Ek probeer honestly fokus op so slim ground play want ek kan nie air dribble nie. Ek het al daai tutorials probeer.
Dit is moeilik met die keyboard. Ek het vanoggend weer eens gesê want op die controller, die ding is op die keyboard is W is jou pitch forward. As jy nou vliegtuig vlieg en jy wil jy maar afvlieg, dan jy vorentoe. Nou opvlieg,
ja.
druk jy agter.
Ja.
Dit is ook maar op hierso is dit jy accelerate ook. So as jy spring en jy druk aan vorentoe, dan gaan jy vorentoe tilt in die neus. As jy double flip moet jy ook W inhou. Maar op 'n controller is jou stick is jou tilt forward. So jy moet vorentoe druk die stick en jy accelerate met 'n ander knop.
Yes.
Vir myself, ek vanoggend op die box settings gedraai en ek was wel, dit is 'n moeilike storie. Want ek het verstaan in my mind probeer. Jy kan met links en regs op gedraai. Jy mind rol werk. Dit is
Ek het begin ek het begin op controller. Probeer nog 'n keer.
Vir my ek moet dit nog gedraai te kom. Dit is my ander ding. Ek het trouwens kyk.
Ja. Ja, ek speel Formula 1 op controller.
Maar die is 'n ander storie. Die volken, is 'n ander vibe. Control, die kan control.
Ek sien ek sit my bolcam alleenlik af wanneer ek gaan verboost.
Ja, ek sê dit ja, dit is maar ek begin dit meer en meer afsit want daar is jy kan al makliker dribbel van die top reg.
Hoor ja.
Dribbel is spin. As jy sê maar op die dak ry en jy ry agteruit. Of onderste bo agteruit. Dan is dit makliker om dit af te sit en dan weer.
Stap op daar. Shit, sorry. Ja, maar dit los jy net op.
Ja,
maar hulle is daar wie te sien.
Dis ek wil restart dit.
Vorige ouens nie.
Hulle is daarmee.
Ek sê hulle is daarmee so goed as die vorige ouens.
Nee. Maar het lijkt wel een hele safety man.
Ja.
Maar ja, dat is destroyed.
Damn it. Shit. Ek wou een pinch teen die kant was.
Ja, dat is bijna.
Ja, net kak geëxecute.
Ja, zij ik heb proberen
Ja. Ek krijg gewoon halfflip, maar het is baie starig. So ek power slide deur. Ja. Gee whiz. Come on.
Ja, ik zou harder proberen.
Ja, je moet ons altijd trekken.
Ja, en ik bestrijk met af en of ik begin ik met track, ja. Of my other thing is like, you can easy score. En dan betekent een story message die aan het kijken.
Zeg mij, wat dien je voor een leven? Oké. Oké, dat is goed. Oké. Word je gezocht? Dat staat een boot. Oké. Ja, maar praktisch zo'n ervaring zou rond worden. Ek weet, ek het nou eers begin swat.
Okay. Maar leef van 'n body.
Nee, ek swat in Johannesburg. So ek kry op elke naweek kry ek deur Joburg te verplaas. Dus môre middag weer deur gaan. Ja, dis deeltyd. Maar dit dis deeltyd, maar dit hulle noem dit hybrid. So ek woon Vrydag online by en dan Saterdag moet jy op kampus wees. Ja, was net 'n bietjie krap, want jy ry 12 ure om 'n 6 ure klas by te wees.
12 ure, joh.
Ja, 5 ure, 5,5 uur.
Vir 'n uur se klas.
6 ure.
6 ure.
Ja, so jy ry. Ja. Sê weer?
Lock in, we need a win, straight up. Ek heb anders is praktisch. 6 ure.
Nee, dis ek is eintlik gegaan as 'n demo. Nee, dis nie prakties nie. Dit is jy moet dit seker hoeveelheid ure in klas bywoon om die kwalifikasie te kry. Ag, ek het hom try hoop.
Begin ek so baie om boost te besit vir die sectors op 'n boost wat jy kry. Jy know, Korea is
Ek is nogal 'n boost vriend. Ek like dit om die boost te steel.
maar ek ja, ek het mense altyd vra, hoekom het jy nooit boost? Ek het altyd boost. Maar dan sit hulle ek gaan ry hoor.
Nooit.
Ek kry goal score 2 score. 2-3 score. Dit is allemaal.
Ja,
Altyd tyd.
hy is nog wenbaar. Kan jy? Ja, ek vind dit is private goed speel. Well done. Kan net dit. Jo. Draai om demme van orde my. Well done. Amper. Ja, kom maar. Hoor ek dink ons moet dalk ek gaan nog eensaam met jou speel. Maar ek dink ons doen dit nie in competitive nie.
Wat ek beter vir
Nee, dit is sleg vir jou rank.
ja, maar jy kan maar nie so erg nie.
Ek is nie
Hy sal reeds net so average as die ander is. Ek kon nie jy weet maar of ek al bumper is dit te kry. Hy kan is dit net om te gaan oefen dat jy nie worry oor die ander kans rank. Maar Dennis baie keer hoor as die ander, né? Maar hy maak nie saak of hy hoor as klaar is.
ek is voor rank.
Soos ek vir Wishy nie begin gesê het, wanneer ons sê ons saak of wat ook al dan sit like. Ag, but we can't airdribble. Ja. Maak nie saak nie. Seker airdribble nie, maak nie saak nie rank.
Ja.
Maar is al
Maar ons party mense wat rarig wat nie eers dribbel nie wat goed is. Hulle speel net slim.
dit is ek speel nie altyd so slim ek is nog slim en ek kan read, maar ek kan ook nie read nie. Ek mis die bal baie keer taal ek weet. Goed, soos fast aerials dan dink ek, okay, nou kan ek fast aerial en dan kom die backflips. Dan stel jy settings dat jy nou nie backflip nie, maar dan dink ek nou dan die bal gaan op. Dan sê ek gaan eers daar wees, maar dan gaan die bal weer af teen die tyd wat jy daar is. Of jy vlieg bo die bal.
Ek probeer vir die bal gaan in die lug nie.
So maklik. Die tyd mense sien dit. Ek was 'n balsport ou, weet, stop en balsport kan ek gedoen het.
Nee ja.
En maar ek weet jy somehow lees ek nie af. Ek kan lees maar geval, maar ek kan ons af hier is in die rug.
Ag, weer eens, dit kom seker maar nie.
Een
Ek kan maar van nie oefen af nie, maar ek probeer nie eens daai funky goed nie. Ek weet ou moet dit oefen, maar dit voel amper asof jy jou tyd mors.
Ja, nee, zeg maar, dit was speel, jy reg nie meer as jy wil. As jy one speel is finish met die ander. En as minder mense op die veld, is net jy al, ja. As jy leer jou kaart control, en jy van het...
Yes.
Die mense sal die bal control van buiten en die bal control van die voet.
Nice. Nice. Yo, but those two computers maar is geen plek.
Dan speel jy nou al, lekker op die staan. Doe een live move, maar hulle weet jy. Jy denk jy dank hulle, maar dan sê jy wat al hoor jy. Later in speel allemaal. Jy speel hierdie kant van geld, hulle speel die kant van geld. Jy speel van veilig. Maar ek is een challenge gegeven, ek is een cowboy.
So, dit is een ding wat ek moet leer op die games om geduldig te wees. Want as ou jou vat in monkey, dan word jy redelijk hard gepunish vir dit. Oh, spring net boor, maar ek wil hom gedem uit.
Dis raai, dit is een succes, maar dit beteken hy is actie. Ek moet dat jy daar gegaan, ek was afgekik.
Sorry. Weet jy hom? Nice. Dit hoop wat paas werk. Ek moet sê, dit kan ek nog redelijk goed behartig as die paas is.
Ja, nee, nice. Ek kan ook nou paas. Paas weer gaan, kyk hier met die John. Het lijkt of je een bal gaat pinchen of gaat vanaf in de bal gaat rijden. Kan het ook zacht is
Ja. Nee man. Come on. Ek moet net reg het opgespring het. Nee. Ek moet net reg het opgespring het. Het jy agtergekom as jy partykeer lyk dit of jy die bal tref en as jy die replay kyk, dan kom jy agter jy was eintlik way mis, maar ek dink dit is gevolg van die ping.
Ja, dit is definitief ping related. Ek tref jy as 'n bal. Ons tournaments in Europa.
Ja.
As jy internet goed is, dan moet dit kabels.
Ek het gehoor die kabels af, ja.
Dis dan heeltemal
Ja, ne? Dis die ander ding wat nice is van controller, is jy...
Maar die replays is ook sneaky, want hulle wys baie keer in die perspektief van jou wat jy die perspektief, maar dit is lekker as jy daar en jy jou datum moet steen op iets en jy close op tyd en jy kan heel jou val. Dit is echt nice. Maar dit is net die angle wat jy
Ja.
in die geval van as jy bal tref, dink jy wat naby.
Ja, hy was net 'n kwak hou geweest. Ek het eintlik probeer diagonal flip. Draai ek kant toe.
Oh ja, jy jump twice. As jy jump op die maar dis
Ja.
Ek jump hier mekaar. Waarom ek hier mekaar? Ek kyk op en spring ek was ek doen. Maar dit is leuk wat ek doen. Ek skryf van 'n sek
Nice. Nice. Well, ek het geen kant hier begin het, wil ek net uit die pad uitkom. Voordat ek op weg. Ek hoor dat jy commit vir die demo en ek hoor dat jy commit vir die demo en jy waste al jou boost en jy kry hom.
Maar jy is commit.
Met ek kom.
Jy is commit amper as jy gaan probeer score dat jy die bal gaan kry. Huge foul, hulle sê jy moet nie freaky met hulle sê jy kan wel cancel.
Ja.
Ek kom by all trees en plats en whatever. Jy fully commit en jy cancel dan altyd 'n 2v1.
Yes.
En selfs as jy spring op 'n ding, as jy challenge doen, dan is dit jy moet uit op jouself jy moet dit
Dit is. Sorry. Daar.
almal is gewoon aan te double flip. Bal. Wat 'n goeie opsie.
Yes.
Jy het 'n pen.
Mooi.
Jy moet
Ja. Ek is daarom maar nie heeltemal oningelig nie. Stamp by my.
om te spring. Jy moet net self in plaas van 15 probeer spring, want jy kan baie vinniger recover.
Yes, sure. Maar baie keer gooi ek teen in die lug op.
Ja, nee, for sure. Maar as jy flip, is dit meer cancel as jy alles in die 50 gedoen het.
No.
Om te recover het, dan is iewers kant toe of omgedraai, wys verkeerde kant toe en al dan so. Met 'n bietjie te spring.
No.
En dan ja, recoveries is die ander training. Dit ek mag geoefen in free play dis hier rond. Jy jaag net rond teen full boost en slaan dis die ander oefening wat jy kan doen.
Ja, dis wat ek die meeste van die tyd doen, wag tussen games. So hard as jy kan en so akkuraat as jy kan.
Ja, okay. So ek hoef jou niks te bring.
Nee, wat. Dankie vir die hulp, ek waardeer dit.
Oké.
Want ons gaan weer saam speel, nee.
Oké, ek moet actually jou naam probeer hier so. Dis Gryper, nee. Dis 'n Gryper.
Rim Grieper, ja.
Grim Reaper, okay.
Ja, Grim Reaper was klaar gevat.
Ja, Grim Reaper was die dis 'n ander span se naam gewees. Ek was dis nie rof, Grim Reaper.
Kom man, lekker aand.
Oké, jy self jou.
Geniet dit, cheers, bye.
Okay, bye, ciao.
Ja.